It was an accident. About an hour ago, a small jet went down inside New York City. The president was on board.
They said it was too dark, too weird, too risky to ever work. But Escape from New York changed the game. John Carpenter's dystopian vision wasn't just a film, it was a battle fought frame by frame. A shoestring budget, a skeptical studio, a leading man who transformed into one of cinema's most unlikely anti-heroes. What hit the screen in 1981 was gritty, dangerous, and unforgettable. But the story behind it is even crazier.
You Snake?
Why?
I can think of lots of reasons why.
From brutal location shoots to fights with the MPAA, from casting battles to near disasters that almost shut production down, Escape from New York became the cult classic Hollywood never wanted, and audiences never forgot. How close did it come to collapse? What secrets still hide in the shadows of Snake Plissken's eye patch? And what truth about its legacy is still being buried today?
You gonna kill me now, Snake?
I'm too tired.
Get ready to uncover 20 shocking truths about Escape from New York that Hollywood doesn't want you to know. Secret Fact 1. The script. Hollywood didn't want John Carpenter first pitched Escape from New York in the mid-1970s, right after Watergate shattered American trust in government. The screenplay was angry, raw, and unapologetically anti-establishment. But Hollywood executives wanted no part of it. Too dark, too cynical, too risky. Studios thought audiences craved clean-cut heroes, not a one-eyed criminal sent to save the president. Carpenter was told flat out, "No one wants this movie." For years, the script gathered dust, rejected by nearly every major studio. Carpenter's breakthrough came only after Halloween exploded at the box office, proving he could deliver a hit on a shoestring budget. Suddenly, those same executives who dismissed him were forced to reconsider. Escape went from unfilmable to maybe, but the resentment lingered. Hollywood didn't believe in the project. They just couldn't ignore Carpenter anymore.
You go in, find the president, bring him out in 24 hours, and you're a free man.
24 hours, huh?
Carpenter didn't bend to Hollywood. He forced Hollywood to bend to him. Escape from New York was born out of rejection, and that chip on its shoulder never went away. Secret Fact 2. Snake Plissken was almost someone else. Kurt Russell wasn't the obvious choice to play Snake Plissken. In fact, he was at the bottom of the list. At the time, Russell was still known for Disney comedies and lighthearted roles. He was charming, not dangerous. The studio wanted a traditional tough guy. Charles Bronson, Tommy Lee Jones, even Clint Eastwood were all considered. But Carpenter refused. He saw something in Russell no one else did, an actor desperate to shed his squeaky clean image. To prepare, Russell transformed himself, studying hardened criminals, altering his posture, and embracing Snake's cynical worldview. He even pushed for the now iconic eye patch, despite executives fearing it would be too distracting. When Russell finally appeared on set in full costume, the crew fell silent. Snake wasn't a parody of toughness. He was a new kind of hero. Hollywood doubted Russell, but he proved them all wrong.
Raise.
Kurt Russell went from Disney darling to the face of a new kind of badass, and Hollywood had no choice but to eat their doubts. Snake Plissken wasn't just a role. He was a revolution in leather and attitude. Hidden fact 3. The budget that nearly crushed the film Escape from New York looked massive on screen, with futuristic prisons, crumbling cities, and dangerous stunts. But the reality was far smaller and far riskier. Carpenter was handed a modest $6 million budget, a fraction of what other studios were spending on science fiction at the time. By comparison, The Empire Strikes Back had cost nearly $30 million. Carpenter and his crew were forced to cut corners at every turn. Whole sets were repurposed, costumes recycled, and effects improvised. They shot in abandoned buildings, often without permits, to save money. The film's dystopian New York wasn't crafted on expensive sound stages. It was cobbled together from scraps, sweat, and a lot of midnight ingenuity. The irony? That raw, dirty aesthetic became one of the film's greatest strengths, selling the illusion of a city lost to decay. What Hollywood called cheap, audiences later recognized as authentic.
Win one way or the other. Doesn't mean shit to me. Give me the paper.
When you come out.
Before.
What looked like a sprawling dystopia was really a patchwork of grit and guts, proving that creativity beats cash every time. Escape from New York didn't just survive its budget, it turned it into cinematic legend. Hidden fact: 4. A real prison as a film set. To create the nightmarish streets of Manhattan-turned-prison, Carpenter didn't rely on Hollywood backlots. Instead, he found East St. Louis, a city gutted by fires, economic collapse, and neglect. The urban decay was so real, the crew barely had to dress the set. Whole blocks of charred, abandoned buildings became Snake's hunting ground. But filming there was dangerous. Crime rates were high, and many locals resented the intrusion. Crew members reported hearing gunshots during night shoots, and some were warned not to stray too far from set. Yet, the location gave Escape its authenticity. Viewers believed they were seeing a ruined New York because, in a way, they were. Carpenter didn't just film a dystopia, he borrowed one. And in doing so, he blurred the line between fiction and reality, capturing a cityscape more terrifying than anything Hollywood could build.
Before the last hour's up, we can neutralize the charge with X-rays.
Carpenter didn't just film a city, he infiltrated one, turning real danger into on-screen terror. Escape from New York became proof that authenticity scares harder than any set designer ever could. Secret fact: 5. The president almost didn't survive. Casting the President of the United States was its own battle. Donald Pleasance, who had worked with Carpenter on Halloween, was brought in to play the role. But Pleasance had his own ideas about the character. He envisioned the president as weak, cowardly, and morally compromised, a far cry from the heroic leaders audiences were used to. Executives hated it. They wanted a noble figure, someone worth saving. Pleasance ignored them. He played the president as a trembling hypocrite, a man unworthy of Snake's sacrifice. The result was shocking, even controversial. Test audiences were unsettled, unsure whether to cheer for the president's rescue or condemn him. Carpenter loved it. To him, Pleasance captured the film's core message: power corrupts, and not every leader deserves loyalty. In the end, the president lived, but the idea of heroism in Escape was forever dead.
You, Snake?
Why?
I can think of lots of reasons why.
Pleasance made the president a coward, and Escape crushed the idea of heroes. Secret fact: 6. Isaac Hayes nearly walked off. Set the casting of soul legend. Isaac Hayes as the Duke of New York was a stroke of genius, but it almost didn't happen. Hayes, known for his music career and flamboyant stage presence, wasn't convinced he belonged in a dystopian sci-fi thriller. He worried he'd be typecast or ridiculed for stepping outside music. But Carpenter insisted. He believed Hayes's charisma would give the Duke a magnetic authority no traditional actor could replicate. Hayes eventually agreed, but production tensions almost drove him away. Long night shoots, freezing temperatures, and grueling hours wore him down. At one point, Hayes reportedly threatened to quit unless the schedule eased. Carpenter smoothed things over, knowing the Duke's presence was irreplaceable. In the end, Hayes delivered one of cinema's most unforgettable villains. His gold-trimmed Cadillac with chandeliers became iconic, embodying the twisted luxury of power in a world of decay. Hayes stayed, but the film nearly lost its crown jewel.
You gonna kill me now, Snake?
I'm too tired.
Hayes almost walked, but the Duke became unforgettable. Luxury and menace rolled into one. Secret fact 7. The stunt that almost killed Snake. One of Escape's most dangerous sequences involved Snake gliding into Manhattan via a silent stealth glider. On screen, it looked seamless. Behind the scenes, it was chaos. Special effects were primitive, and the stunt work relied on a mix of models, matte paintings, and live-action trickery. During one setup, Russell was nearly injured when faulty rigging malfunctioned. Crew members recalled a terrifying moment where equipment collapsed, narrowly missing the actor. The risk wasn't limited to Russell. Stunt performers were constantly pushed to the edge. In an era before strict safety regulations, the crew improvised dangerous setups with little margin for error. Carpenter later admitted that they were lucky no one died during filming. The irony? What looked like a simple scene almost became a production-ending tragedy. Snake's daring entry into Manhattan mirrored the film itself. Bold, reckless, and barely surviving against impossible odds.
I want to give you a job. We'd make one hell of a team, Snake.
The glider scene nearly killed them, but on screen, it soared. Escape was chaos made legendary. Secret fact 8. The matte painting that fooled everyone. The film's dystopian New York skyline was one of its most striking visuals, but it wasn't real. It was a massive matte painting by legendary artist James Cameron, then an unknown working in special effects. Cameron painstakingly created the illusion of a ruined Manhattan, blending models, paintings, and camera tricks. The effect was so convincing that many viewers assumed Escape had been shot in New York itself. Executives were stunned at how far their limited budget stretched. But here's the twist. Cameron wasn't credited for his work. At the time, he was just another struggling artist trying to break into Hollywood. Only years later, after Cameron became a blockbuster director, did fans realize he'd left his fingerprints on Carpenter's dystopia. That uncredited skyline wasn't just movie magic, it was the first sign of a genius in the making.
And remember, once you're inside, you're on your own.
Oh, you mean I can't count on you?
No.
Good.
Cameron's skyline fooled everyone, launching a legend before he even had a name. Escape hid genius in plain sight. Secret fact 9. Kurt Russell's transformation into Snake. For Kurt Russell, Snake Plissken wasn't just a role, it was a rebirth. Up until then, Russell was still battling his Disney kid reputation, known more for family-friendly comedies than gritty anti-heroes. To embody Snake, Russell trained himself physically and psychologically. He worked with military consultants to learn tactical movement and studied the mannerisms of hardened criminals. More importantly, he built Snake's cynicism into every gesture, every line delivery. The voice, low, gravelly, half-growled, was Russell's invention, meant to make Snake sound like a man burned out by the world. Even the eye patch was his idea, though it caused him constant discomfort and headaches during filming. By the time cameras rolled, Russell had disappeared. Snake wasn't a character anymore. He was an alter ego, a cinematic icon born out of rebellion. For Russell, Escape wasn't just another gig. It was the role that saved his career and made him immortal.
A lot of people died in the process. I just wondered how you felt about it.
Well,
Russell became Snake, shedding Disney and becoming a legend. Escape didn't just launch a character, it forged an icon. Secret fact 10. Carpenter's fight with the studio Universal never believed in Escape from New York. Executives hated the script, doubted the cast, and wanted major changes. They demanded a bigger star than Kurt Russell, more action, and a cleaner ending. Carpenter resisted at every turn. He refused to turn Snake into a traditional hero, refused to glamorize authority, and refused to deliver a neatly wrapped-up resolution. Tensions grew so heated that at one point, Carpenter threatened to walk. The studio, desperate to protect their investment, eventually relented, but not without cutting the budget and applying constant pressure. The struggle bled into the film itself, giving it a rough, defiant edge. Escape wasn't just a story about rebellion against authority. It was rebellion in practice. Carpenter versus Hollywood, Snake versus the system, art versus commerce. And somehow, against all odds, rebellion won.
Pliskin, what are you doing?
Playing with myself. I'm going in.
Carpenter fought the studio and won, giving Escape its raw edge. Rebellion wasn't just on screen, it ran through every frame. Secret fact. 11. The real prison that inspired Manhattan Carpenter's vision of Manhattan as a walled-off prison wasn't pure imagination. It was inspired by real-world debates happening in the 1970s. Crime rates in New York were skyrocketing, and newspapers often painted the city as a decaying, lawless wasteland. Some politicians seriously floated extreme proposals, including the idea of converting parts of the city into high-security containment zones. Carpenter, fascinated and horrified, took the paranoia to its logical extreme. The entire island of Manhattan turned into a prison. He mixed that urban nightmare with the political distrust of the Watergate era, creating a world where government control was just as terrifying as the criminals themselves. The result was a vision that felt disturbingly possible. Watching Escape in 1981 wasn't escapism. It was a grim reflection of fears Americans were already whispering about. Carpenter didn't invent the prison city. He just turned it into cinema's ultimate dystopian metaphor.
That's a bunch of bullshit. You're not supposed to be in here, Brain.
Carpenter turned real fears into a prison city, making dystopia feel dangerously real. Escape wasn't fantasy. It was a mirror of its time. Secret fact 12. The president almost looked very different. Casting Donald Pleasance as the kidnapped U.S. president was another gamble. Pleasance, famous for his role in Halloween, brought gravitas to a role that could have been cartoonish. But he wasn't the studio's first choice. Executives wanted a more traditionally presidential figure. Names like Charlton Heston were tossed around. Carpenter pushed back, arguing that Pleasance's frailty and nervous energy would make the character more believable. He didn't want a strong, commanding leader. He wanted someone who looked out of his depth, someone unworthy of the office, yet still holding immense power. Pleasance embraced the part, playing the president not as a hero, but as a coward clinging to authority. His performance gave the film one of its most haunting scenes. The president unloading a machine gun in bitter revenge, exposing the hollowness of power. In Carpenter's America, even the president was broken, corrupt, and afraid. Pleasance turned the president into a coward, exposing power as hollow and terrifying. Escape didn't spare anyone, not even the highest office. Secret fact. 13. Snake almost had a partner. In early drafts of the script, Snake wasn't alone. Carpenter originally wrote the story with a sidekick character, a wisecracking criminal who would serve as comic relief and balance Snake's icy demeanor. Studio executives actually loved the idea, seeing it as a way to make the film more mainstream and marketable, but Russell and Carpenter hated it. They believed Snake worked best as a loner, a man whose silence said more than any banter could. After heated arguments, the sidekick was cut. What remained was a sparse, stripped-down journey through a hostile city, carried entirely by Snake's presence. Ironically, what the studio thought would make the film more accessible could have ruined it. Snake's solitude is what gives the movie its weight. With no partner to soften him, he became something sharper, more dangerous. In the end, Escape didn't just dodge a cliché, it cemented Snake Plissken as one of cinema's greatest lone wolves.
And when we roll down the 69th Street Bridge tomorrow, on our way to freedom.
Cutting the sidekick made Snake sharper, lonelier, unstoppable. Escape thrived on solitude, and Snake became legend. Secret fact: 14. The night New York burned on screen. One of the film's most unforgettable images is the burning wreckage of Manhattan streets, flames licking at ruined buildings, smoke curling through the night sky. But that devastation wasn't created with CGI. It was shot in East St. Louis, Illinois, a city already scarred by fire and economic collapse. Carpenter and his crew transformed its crumbling blocks into post-apocalyptic New York, working mostly at night to avoid drawing attention. Locals often wandered onto set, stunned to see their own city repurposed as a dystopia. For Carpenter, the choice wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. He wanted the ruined future of America to be rooted in a real place, in real decline. That authenticity bled into the screen. When audiences saw Escape's New York in flames, they weren't just watching fiction. They were watching the decay of America itself, projected in neon firelight. East St. Louis became Manhattan on fire. Real decay turned cinematic. Escape didn't fake it. It burned with authenticity. Secret fact: 15. The ending that sparked outrage. Escape from New York doesn't end with victory. It ends with Snake betraying the government, destroying the president's message, and walking away. It was a shocking conclusion in an era when audiences expected resolution and triumph. Studio executives begged Carpenter to rewrite it, fearing viewers would reject such a cynical finale. Carpenter refused. To him, Snake wasn't a hero. He was a survivor, a man who owed nothing to anyone. The ending left audiences unsettled, unsure if they had just witnessed justice or nihilism. Critics were divided, some calling it brilliant, others dismissing it as mean-spirited. But over time, the ending became one of the film's defining strengths. It wasn't just Snake's rebellion against the system. It was Carpenter's rebellion against Hollywood storytelling. In a world demanding conformity, Escape closed with defiance, and audiences never forgot it.
Stay left, stay left, stay left, and then jog right when I tell you.
You're pushing it too hard.
Snake walked away, leaving the system and Hollywood burned. Escape didn't end clean. It ended unforgettable. Secret fact: 16. Carpenter versus the studio. Carpenter's creative battles with the studio didn't end once filming wrapped. The executives at Avco Embassy were nervous about how bleak the movie turned out. They wanted more action, more explosions, more Hollywood spectacle. Carpenter, however, fought tooth and nail to keep the tone gritty and restrained. He argued that Escape wasn't about spectacle. It was about paranoia, distrust, and survival. Rumors spread that the studio even considered bringing in another director to punch it up with reshoots, but Carpenter refused to budge. Ultimately, he got his way, though at the cost of tension with executives who saw him as stubborn and difficult. That label would haunt his career, especially after They Live. But here, Carpenter's defiance preserved the movie's soul. Without compromise, Escape from New York became exactly what he intended: dark, cynical, and unforgettable. Carpenter refused to compromise, keeping Escape dark and raw. Hollywood wanted spectacle. He gave them grit, secret fact. 17. The prisoners who weren't actors. In one of the film's grittiest scenes, Snake wanders through crowds of prisoners who leer, threaten, and stalk him with eerie authenticity. What most viewers don't realize is that many of those extras weren't traditional actors at all. Carpenter and his team recruited locals from East St. Louis, some of whom had real experience with the prison system, to fill the background. The result was a level of realism no professional could fake. Their movements, their stares, even the way they carried themselves on screen gave the city its dangerous heartbeat. Crew members later admitted that the atmosphere on set felt tense, as if the line between performance and reality was blurring. In Carpenter's prison city, fiction and truth weren't far apart. Those weren't just characters in Snake's path. They were the shadows of America's own decay, captured forever on film.
I said jog right! You asshole.
Real prisoners, real menace. Escape pulsed with authentic danger. Snake's world wasn't acted, it was lived. Secret fact. 18. The score. That almost never happened. Carpenter's hypnotic synthesizer scores are legendary, and Escape from New York is no exception. Its pulsing, minimalist theme became one of the most iconic soundtracks of the 1980s. But the studio initially hated it. Executives wanted a more traditional orchestral score, something grand and patriotic to underline the film's dystopian America. Carpenter refused, insisting that the cold electronic pulse was the sound of the future, a future stripped of warmth, humanity, and hope. Working with Alan Howarth, he recorded the score on a shoestring budget, layering simple rhythms into something unforgettable. Critics at the time dismissed it as cheap, but fans embraced it, and later generations recognized it as groundbreaking. Today, the Escape theme is considered one of Carpenter's best works. The music didn't just set the mood, it defined Snake Plissken's world with every ominous note. Carpenter's synths turned cheap beats into iconic tension. Escape sounded like the future, and it still does. Secret fact 19. Snake's eye patch was almost a disaster. Snake Plissken's eye patch became his defining feature, a small touch that turned Kurt Russell into an icon. But the decision to wear it almost backfired. The patch limited Russell's vision so severely that action scenes became genuinely dangerous. During fight sequences, he often had no depth perception, making stunts far riskier than planned. At one point, he nearly injured himself during a brawl because he misjudged the distance of a prop weapon. The crew even suggested ditching the patch, but Russell refused. He believed it was essential to Snake's look, a visual shorthand for his battle-worn past. In the end, the danger was worth it. That single strip of black cloth transformed Russell from a former Disney star into a cinematic legend. Snake Plissken wasn't just tough. He looked like a man who had already survived hell.
Oh, Snake Plissken in my cab? Wait till I tell Eddie.
The eye patch almost cost Russell his safety, but made Snake unforgettable. One strip of cloth, one legendary icon. Secret fact. 20. Escape's legacy that outran the film. When Escape from New York first hit theaters in 1981, it wasn't a massive box office smash. It performed respectably, but critics were divided, and some dismissed it as pulp. Yet, like Snake himself, the film refused to die. Over the decades, it became a cult phenomenon, inspiring comics, video games, and even a sequel. Escape from LA filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, and James Cameron have cited it as a major influence. Snake Plissken became a blueprint for the anti-hero, shaping characters from Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid to countless action rebels that followed. What began as a low-budget gamble grew into one of the most influential dystopian films ever made. In the end, Escape didn't just trap Manhattan, it escaped Hollywood's control and carved its own legend.
But I wanted to catch that show. This stuff is like gold around here, you know.
Escape flopped at first, but refused to die. Snake became legend, and the film rewrote dystopia forever. Escape from New York wasn't just a gritty sci-fi thriller. It was a cinematic gamble that nearly fell apart before it even reached theaters. Behind the dystopian streets, masked anti-heroes, and pulse-pounding action, production was riddled with budget battles, casting surprises, and dangerous stunts that almost ended careers. The film we know could have been a very different, far less iconic movie. If this peek behind the chaos and creativity of Escape from New York gave you chills, drop your favorite shocking secret or scene in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden truths from Hollywood's most legendary films. Remember, some escapes are too wild to stay locked away.